Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about 10 things in the modern gay community that I hate. When I came up with the idea for this video, I wanted to talk about things that are specific to 2025 or at least still persist in the gay community that I think we should be over. A lot of times when you see listicles like this, you get people who are a bit bitter or have this vendetta against the gay community. And I want to just preface the start of this video by saying I have a lot of love for the gay community and I will be doing a video about 10 things I love. However, I wanted to start with some of the things that I think we can improve on. If you can't voice what's wrong, you're never really going to make progress as a community. So I think it's important that we have a little bit of self-reflection. Obviously, feel free to disagree with me. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. Perhaps maybe I'm a little bit too bitter or jaded myself. So if anyone needs to check me, I'm kind of open to that. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to be talking about is overemphasis on physical appearance. Obviously, we all want to look good. I want to look good. I got ready before I put on this video, but I think there's a point at which the gay community takes it just a little bit too far. Gay men have always cared about their physical appearance. This goes back to physique magazines in the 1950s, all the way to gym bunnies in the 80s and 90s, and today with Instagram, influencers, models, all of that. I think the dark side of being people who are known to look good is that, one, we tend to treat people who don't look as good negatively and put them down, and that includes ourselves often. I know a lot of gay men who don't feel comfortable going out at night if they haven't gone to the gym earlier or they haven't been good on their diet. I know other gay men who spend hours criticizing different parts of their body, even though objectively they look great, but if their pecs aren't big enough or they have a little bit of a love handle situation going on, they think they're unlovable. However, I do think that we do need to look in the mirror in another sense, not in the physical sense, but just in the sense of who are we paying attention to as gay men? I think sometimes we critique the fact that gay men are all obsessed with physical appearance, but then we ourselves follow nothing but hot shirtless guys on Instagram. I think if we put too much emphasis on these attractive men, we tell ourselves subconsciously that if we don't look like that, we're not good enough. The second thing I wanted to talk about, and it's related to the first, is an obsession with youth. Specifically, I was thinking about the way that gay men tend to treat youth as a virtue. Normally, we think of things like patience, humility, good work ethic, intelligence as virtues, things that bring good and happiness to your life and are things to aspire to. But gay men treat youth, something that just happens, as a virtue. And that's a problem for a number of reasons. One reason is because naturally we're all going to get older. So if we think that youth is a virtue, we think that as time progresses, we're going to be less and less worthy and less good. The other thing that is a problem with treating youth as a virtue is it takes away from the joy that you can feel in different eras of your life. For example, if you feel you're old at 35, you might tell yourself, I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to try this new thing because I'm too old to do it. Nobody's going to want to talk to me. Whatever the barrier in your head is, you're almost going to self-police and hold yourself back a lot. Obviously, a lot of the reason why people feel like they're too old is because they're getting that message from the community at large. I think joking in the gay community about age is really common. It's really easy if you're at a gay bar to hear somebody joke about them being too old to do this or that other person being way too old to be wearing that. And I think that sort of messaging really is toxic and just kind of makes everyone feel on edge, and it kind of holds all of us back because we all are old to someone. I'm 30, so I'm young to someone who's 40, but I'm old to someone who's 25. And so it's also relative, and it's weird that we just fixate on this youth. And I think one of the reasons that might be is because we missed out on a lot of our teenage years as gay men. I think there is this almost romanticization or nostalgia for this era that we never really had, which is our teenage life. However, It doesn't mean that we have to consciously put other people down all the time for being older than us. I think there's nothing inherently good about being old or young. They're just different life phases that we'll all hopefully eventually go through. The third thing that I wanted to talk about today is hidden Masc-for-Masc superiority complexes. And I'll describe what I mean by that. Basically, I think the era of blatantly putting Masc-for-Masc on your dating profiles is somewhat over. Of course, I see it from time to time, particularly if I'm traveling in a different country or something like that. But I think for the large part, at least in the UK or in the US, I don't see this type of language as often. However, what I do see is the legacy of Masc-for-Masc culture kind of subtly creeping in the way that gay men think about themselves and kind of have this feeling of I'm better than other gays still. And you'll kind of know when this happens when people start sentences with things like, you know, I'm not one of those gays who, and then they'll go on to describe some sort of quality that's usually feminine that they don't want to be associated with, that they think makes them better than. So for example, someone might say something along the lines of, I'm not one of those gays who watches RuPaul's Drag Race. I prefer sports. Or I'm not one of those gays who feels the need to go out every weekend. I'd rather just sit at home and play video games with my boyfriend. It's fine to be one of those gays who likes to sit at home and play video games with his boyfriend. But I feel like it's odd that we feel the need to be so combative about our preferences. Obviously, there is a stereotype that gay men do like going out, but is it even really necessary to point out if you're just telling people what you like to do? It's better to just focus on the things that you do enjoy versus distancing yourself from other people. There could be gays who like to go out partying, but who could be really intellectual. There could be gays that have a lot of sex but are volunteering for the community and have a loving boyfriend. The judgment inherent in some of these kind of Masc-for-Masc coded assumptions about other people is what's really a turnoff. It's not the Masc-for-Masc-ness necessarily. That is, it's not that people like masculine things that's a problem. It's that they feel the need to still distance themselves from that which is feminine. The next thing I wanted to talk about, the fourth thing, is being overly online. I think obviously our entire world is perhaps overly online, but I wanted to speak about it within the context of the gay community specifically, because I think what we're seeing right now a lot of is gay men defaulting, or just queer people in general, defaulting to online spaces over in-person spaces. And there are a number of reasons to want to go to online spaces, particularly if you're from a rural place where there's not a lot of in-person interaction, or you're younger and still working through your identity. Perhaps you're not comfortable in an in-person space, but you feel more comfortable exploring it in an online situation. However, for those who are out and a little bit older, there's no need to spend so much of our lives online. But I think the gay community is missing out on crucial aspects of its identity by spending so much time on Grindr, by spending so much time posting our lives to Instagram, versus being more present in gay bars, being more present in groups and activities like gay sports leagues. There's so many physical places that we can be, especially in bigger cities. And I think a lot of times we are missing out by being overly online these days. The fifth thing is lack of kindness. I'm not saying that gay men are all mean and bitchy. However, I think what I see a lot is people default to this sort of catty persona versus just doing the nice thing, almost as a defense mechanism, but it's very prevalent in the gay community, even in 2025, which is a really sad thing. I feel like a lot of gay men are strong and, inspirational people. We don't really need this sort of facade of cattiness and meanness to protect us. We can actually engage with new people in a nice and welcoming way. And I think we can give people a lot more grace in our interactions with them. I don't know. I just think I'm really sick of hearing people constantly put each other down. And I think even though a bit of humor is very gay and very much part of our culture, I think there's a point at which it becomes mean-spirited. And I wish that some gay men would kind of temper that instinct to inherently be catty and mean with an instinct to be more kind and loving. The sixth thing that I wanted to talk about that I hate about the gay community is sexual harassment. This one's a bit tough to talk about because I don't want to feed into the right-wing narrative that gay men are sexual perverts or are deviants in the sense that they are predators or anything like that. None of that is what I'm saying at all. However, I do think the gay community does have a problem with sexual assault and sexual harassment. And I'm specifically talking about gay men in gay male spaces and not talking about gay men being predators to straight men or to other groups. I'm talking about adult gay men harassing other adult gay men. I myself have had guys just grab my butt in the middle of a bar without any consent. I've had other instances of guys telling me, and this is multiple instances of guys telling me that I need to smile more when I don't look super happy at a bar. These are things that women deal with all the time, and I'm not taking that away from women. Why are gay men treating each other the way that misogynistic straight men treat women? Both are wrong. And I think it's time, especially in 2025, for gay men to really not let this behavior slide and to call it out when we see it. The seventh thing that I wanted to talk about is that the gay community tends to be overly competitive. And by that, I mean that gay men have a tendency to compare things all the time. Job, personal success, number of friends, follower count on Instagram, the luxury vacations, the best fashion. And it's really exhausting because so many of us are doing the best we can, really. And I don't think it's helpful to constantly feel the need to prove yourself to other people. It's something that actually really impacted me a lot when I was first going out a lot with gay men. Every conversation seemed to be some sort of social comparison. And at first it made me feel really insecure, but now I've kind of started to distance myself and feel like I don't really need that in my life. If people are overly competitive, it's an instant turnoff for me. I'd rather people who are supportive and know what they like versus need to fill this sort of ego and to make themselves feel better by subtly but still putting other people down. All right, so we're getting close to the end of the video, but for the eighth thing I wanted to talk about was an overemphasis of hookup culture at the expense of other types of connection. Hookup culture to me isn't necessarily a problem. I think it's great that gay men are sexually liberated and that gay men feel like they can engage in sexual activity a lot more freely than our straight counterparts. However, when this sexual liberation becomes overly central to our lives, and when this takes away from connection with other types of people like women or straight men, it can negatively impact us. And I think that unfortunately, the gay community does have a little bit of a problem with an overemphasis on hookup culture, and we could do well to cultivate other forms of connection, even within the gay community, between gay men. I think there's this attitude of, if I don't want to sleep with him, then I'm not really going to give him the time of day, which is kind of a shame because sometimes we just want a friend. Think of all the friendships that we're missing out on just because we filter the world through our sexual preferences. The ninth thing is what I'm going to label as cool gay mentality. This is the idea that there are certain things that gay men should be into in order to be part of the in crowd of gays. And if you're not part of the in crowd of gays, you're less than. This shows up in different ways depending on your geographical and I guess age group. But there is this idea that certain gays are cooler and more interesting and more desirable than other gays based off of really arbitrary things. A lot of times it could be what's in fashion, what songs you're supposed to like, what shows you're supposed to watch, what friends you're supposed to have, what types of jobs you're supposed to do. There is this idea that you're supposed to always be kind of partying and you're supposed to always be down to go to, the latest club, and you're supposed to wear your hair a certain way and wear your jeans a certain way and wear those sneakers. And this is something that's been historical for gay men. There's this whole idea about the Castro clone in San Francisco in the 70s and 80s, where basically all gay men started dressing the same way in this very hyper-masculine sort of, I guess, pastiche of sorts. Gay men are fabulous and should be able to express themselves in any way that they want, and I don't know why we would all want to just be the same. The 10th one is a bit of a serious one, but I do think it's important, and that is the lack of genuine and serious self-improvement. I think gay men have been through a lot. Growing up, we face bullying, we face rejection, we face insecurity, and we face a lot of loneliness. It takes time to get through those issues into adulthood. However, I see a lot of gay men really pretending like these things never happened or hiding behind a facade, which might explain some of the things I talked about earlier, like being overly catty or overly focused on success and social comparison. And I see us missing out on the opportunity to connect with ourselves and to heal some of those past wounds. And unfortunately, until we do that, we're going to keep hurting each other. So thanks for coming to the end of the video. If you have made it this far, I really do appreciate any thoughts that you might have on these 10 issues that I've laid out that I think the gay community needs to address. If you have any feedback, I'm always open. And thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Peace, love, and kindness, and all of that.